Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Butcher, recently of TechCrunch, and now just me on my own. So watch this space. But it's a delight to be here. TechBBQ's got a lot bigger since I started to going to some meetups about 10 years ago. So it's fantastic to see everybody here. I'm delighted to be joined by something of a legend, Larry Miller, who's chairman of the Jordan brand for Nike. Hands up, who's got a Nike? Who's got Nikes? Oh, that's a lot. Wow, that is an amazing number. And obviously, we're all very familiar with how Nike's been an absolutely incredible brand story over the last, well, decades, really, and especially, of course, the Jordan brand. And I think it's almost like it's an incredible case study of how to tell a story about a brand. Just quickly, I want to get into some of these things in a second, but just as a kind of a heads up, Larry, tell us about your your inspiration being involved in Nike and the Jordan brand. What was the germination of some of the inspirations behind that storytelling?
So, well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. One of the things that we've done with the Jordan brand is when we started to build Jordan as a separate brand within Nike, our goal was really to figure out how we could inspire and motivate people through our product, through our storytelling. And that was the goal. We believed that if we did that, if we motivated and inspired people, that the dollars would come. And so our goal was to create stories, create product that motivated and inspired people to be the best they could be. Michael Jordan has, arguably, I don't think it's an argument, but to me, he's the greatest ever. But the whole idea was to inspire people to pursue excellence, to pursue being the best that they could possibly be. And our goal was to bring out the Michael Jordan in everyone. And that's what inspired us to tell the stories that we did and to connect with consumers in a way that we thought could motivate and inspire people.
Amazing. And but also there's something sort of deeply, sort of almost like borderline spiritual about it in a way. I think especially the idea of sports being something that's urging you on to sort of your highest achievement. When you look at what happens in the tech world, and I'm sure you're very aware of some of the things that happen, and the brands and the storytelling around those tech brands, what are your sort of impressions? Do you feel that it's done often in a kind of very haphazard, badly thought out way, or are you impressed with some of the things you see and the storytelling and the brands around tech that you observe?
Yeah, I have been. I think some of the storytelling around what's going on in the tech world, I think, is great. I do think there are opportunities to maybe tell the stories in a little different way. And one of our goals is always to make sure that we understand as clearly as we can our consumer, who we're targeting, who we're talking to, and making sure that the stories that we tell are resonating with that particular consumer group. And so that's been the focus for us. And I think when it comes to tech storytelling and marketing, I think the same things apply. I think authenticity, to me, is a key when it comes to storytelling. If you're telling stories that are not authentic or that don't really connect with consumers, I think that's where the problems come in. But to me, authenticity is an incredibly important aspect. To try to tell stories that really don't resonate or you're not really connected to it in an authentic way is almost impossible to me.
There's been a move, I think, in the last few years. I think we've sort of all seen it, especially around podcasting. Now, we're all very aware of how almost every startup seems to like have a podcast or a big tech company. Look at Stripe, podcast in a pub, in an Irish pub. You look at some of the stuff that Eric Schmidt's been doing, Bill Gates. Some of these big tech founders, and obviously even smaller tech founders now having podcasts and sort of branding. And there's even, there's a sort of a movement around tech founders kind of thinking very much about their personal branding even now. Obviously, with Jordan, Jordan and Nike being so intimately associated with each other, Michael Jordan and Nike, and obviously that's an individual story. Do you think it's the right thing to do for when you're thinking about authenticity for a tech founder to use themselves as their own personal kind of vehicle to tell the brand story around what they're doing?
Well, I think it depends on what the story is. I think it depends on how they decide to tell it. I decided a few years ago to share my personal story, and the response to that has been incredible.
Yeah.
But I
want to ask you about that. Just in 1 second. Give us your answer about the tech founders, and then let's get into your story.
Well, again, I think it depends on what the story is. If a tech founder is telling their story so that it motivates other people, or it inspires other people, or it educates other people, then I think that it makes a lot of sense to do that.
Motivates, inspires, educates. I think that's something we could definitely take away with. Talking about your own personal story, which you actually have written a book as well, it's quite something. And I don't think everybody here is aware of what you've been through in your life. Do you want to tell us in your own words?
Sure. So I grew up in Philadelphia, in the inner city in West Philadelphia. And at an early age of 12, 13 years old, I got involved in gang activity. I was pulled into street life, ended up in and out of trouble. When I was 16 years old, I shot another kid and killed him. And I was charged as an adult, was sentenced to 4.5 to 20 years, did the 4.5, got out, went back to the same neighborhood, got involved in the same thing and was kind of in and out of jail. And the last time I was arrested, I had 5 armed robbery charges. And when I got to the prison this time, I had decided that I wanted to change my life. I didn't want to live that life any longer. My oldest daughter had just been born, and I wanted to be there for her. So I started trying to figure out how I could change my life. When I got to the prison, they had a program there where you could actually take college classes inside the prison and then qualify to move into trailers that were outside the prison wall, live in those trailers, and leave every day and go to school and just have to be back by 8 o'clock in the evening. I got into that program, got my associate's degree while I was in that program, transferred to a halfway house in North Philadelphia and transferred my credits to Temple University, got my bachelor's degree from Temple University, and of all things, I got my bachelor's degree in accounting. As a criminal, I decided to be an accountant. But when I was about to graduate, there was what was known as the Big 8 accounting firms at that point in the U.S. And I had kind of zeroed in on one of those Big 8 that I wanted to work for. It was called Arthur Andersen. I ended up going there, interviewing with people all day long. And all day in the back of my mind, I was wondering, should I share my story with these folks? Because all they knew is I was a young man about to graduate with honors, and they were interested, and I was interested. But all day I kept thinking I should share my story. I should come clean with these folks. So finally, I got to the last person, and I decided I was going to share my story with him. He was the hiring manager. And so I started to share my story with him, and as I'm talking to him, I could see his face changing not in a good way. And finally, I got done, and he pulled out an envelope. He said, "Wow, that's an amazing story." And he pulled out an envelope, and he said, "I have an offer letter here that I was all ready to give you, but I can't give it to you now." He said, "I wish you the best, but I can't hire you." And at that point, I had a lot of things going through my mind. The first one was, this has been a waste of my time. I will never be allowed, because of my record and because of what I've done, I will never be allowed to build a career, to build a professional career, just because it won't happen. Folks won't let me do it. And my initial thought was it would be easier for me to just go back to what I know, go back to the street and go back to doing what I was doing. But I decided I wasn't going to do that. I was going to continue to try to build a career and try to, become a professional. But I also decided at that point that I wasn't going to share the information anymore. I wouldn't lie about it. I wouldn't deny it. But I wasn't going to volunteer the information. And for almost 40 years, that's how I built my career. People that I worked with who I'm close enough to consider family didn't know anything about my background and my career. And my oldest daughter, the one who kind of inspired me to change my life, she was pushing me that, Dad, you need to share your story because it can motivate and inspire people. And I kept saying, no, I'm not going to do it, because my concern was it would ruin everything that I had built up to that point. But over the years, she worked on me and she convinced me that I should share the story. And actually, her and I worked on it together. We worked on for a little over 10 years. We worked on putting this story together and putting this book together. And as I was certain that I was going to share this story, I had a list of people that I wanted to make sure I shared with them before they heard it some other way. And at the top of that list were Michael Jordan and Phil Knight, the founder of Nike. And I ended up sharing with both of them virtually, because this was all going on during the pandemic. And had the first call with Phil Knight, and I went through and kind of shared with him. My daughter inspired me to do this. And when I was done, he said, this was on a FaceTime call. When I was done, he said, I had reached out to both of them and said I had something personal I wanted to share with them. And when I was done, Phil Knight said, when you said something personal, I didn't know what to think, but I can absolutely assure you it wasn't this. He said, but I think your story is not only inspirational, but aspirational, and I'll do whatever I can to help you. The next day, I had a call with Michael Jordan and kind of went through the same thing with him. My daughter inspired me to do this. And when I was done, there was silence on the other end of the phone. It probably was only a couple of seconds, but it felt like an hour. And finally, he said, I agree with your daughter. You need to share this story, and whatever I can do to help, I will. I've been incredibly fortunate to have built an amazing career. I've started my career working at Campbell Soup once I graduated from Temple. That was the first job I got as an accountant. Worked at Campbell Soup for 5 years. Left there and went to work for a company called VF. They make apparel. They're an apparel company. Worked at VF for about 4 or 5 years. And then I ended up coming to Nike. And actually, I went to, while I was at VF, I worked for one of their brands. It's called Janssen, and they were headquartered in Portland, Oregon. And I was able to put a deal together between Janssen and Nike. And after a while, the guy who was the head of apparel at Nike reached out to me and said, hey, would you consider coming to work for Nike? I was like, yeah, I can do that. And so I started at Nike as the head of apparel in the US. And I did that for about 1.5 years, and then Michael Jordan was about to retire from the Bulls for the second time. And there was a lot of concern around Nike that, because the formula was, we make a cool shoe, we do some storytelling, some marketing around the shoe, and then Michael Jordan wears it 82 games and into the playoffs, and that was the formula to sell shoes. And now you're taking a big part of that formula out. Michael's no longer playing. So there was a lot of concern, and a lot of people were thinking hey, it was a good run, but it's over at this point. But myself and a few other people around Nike thought that there was life after Michael Jordan's playing days, and that we could take that logo and actually create a brand. And so I was asked by Phil Knight and Michael Jordan to put a team together and strategies around how we were going to take that logo and create a brand. Phil Knight accused me of cherry picking the organization, which he was right, I did. I picked the best people I could possibly get. And when we started, the business was about $140, $150 million, and this year will be about between $8 and $9 billion. So we did okay. We did okay.
Amazing, amazing, amazing story. When you started, when you went public with the story about what had happened to you as a young person and in your early days, what was the sort of initial response? You know, what sort of feedback did you get? You know, when you went public.
So I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't know how people would react to it, but I have to say the reaction has been extremely positive. Nike has been great in terms of their support. One of the best things that came out of this for me is that I got an opportunity to meet with the young man the family of the young man that I shot. I was 16, I was drunk, I was gang involved, and I got a chance to meet with his family and to tell them how remorseful and sorry I was for what I had done. I think about it every day, and I regret it every single day, but I can't go back and undo it. But I was fortunate enough to meet with the family and share that with them, and each one of them spoke about how what happened had affected them. But at the end of each one of them speaking, they said, "But I forgive you." And that meant more to me than anything else that has come out of this. The fact that I was able to meet with the family and get that forgiveness from them. Also, it lifted an incredible burden off of me because for almost 40 years, I was carrying around this fear, this concern that somehow this would come out and ruin everything that I had built up to that point. I had recurring nightmares of going back to jail for something that I didn't know what it was. I had migraines so bad I ended up in the ER a number of times, but it was because I was holding all of this anxiety and stress and pressure in, and concerned that somehow this story would come out and ruin everything I built. One of the positives of what I did was it allowed me to tell the story on my own terms. It allowed me to put this out on my own terms versus it came out and I was trying to defend it somehow. I was able to do it on my own terms, tell it the way I wanted to tell it, and that's been an incredible, incredible burden lifted off of my shoulders.
Do you feel that those early experiences fed into your ability to storytell about the companies and the brands that you've worked with?
I absolutely think that the experiences that I had gave me a perspective that I think the majority of other people sitting at the table with me would not have had. And I think I was able to see some things or think about some things in a different way than folks who had not experienced what I experienced. And so I think it did. Not that I would recommend it for anybody, but I think it did. There were some benefits for me that I was able to take learnings from my experiences and move forward. And the approach that I take, we were talking with someone that played with Michael Jordan at one point, and he said, you know, Michael Jordan never lost the game. He either won or he learned. And to me, that's the way I've kind of approached things. It's like, if there's an experience that may not be as positive or the way I would want it to go, but if I can learn something from that experience, then it's not a loss.
You either win or you learn. That's rather something to take away. Right, we have some questions that have come in from the audience on our Slido there. I'm just going to sort of summarize some of them. A lot of it's about storytelling, and one particular is talking about how do you build momentum with storytelling and building hype around a product. What's your view about, you know, kind of getting that kind of hype moment that many tech brands often really, you know, just crave?
I think we had an advantage. We had Michael Jordan, who has all these incredible moments throughout his career.
Start with a star.
and we could tap into that experience. We could tap into the incredible stories of his career, what he did on and off the court, and we were able to tap into that. And every shoe that we launched, there's a story behind every. We don't put a shoe out unless there's a story. We don't design a shoe. It starts with a story, and then from the story, then the shoe gets created. But every shoe starts with a story, and that's the way we've operated. And I think again we had some pretty incredible stories that we could tell.
What do you? There's an interesting story about whether or not you can carry that story over when the player isn't playing. Obviously, Michael Jordan isn't playing anymore, and but how do you carry that storytelling over in a brand that might have started with something and now has to kind of evolve? What kinds of thinking and what sort of methodologies do you use?
Now that's a great question, because when we started, like I said, Michael Jordan had retired, but what we did was bring other athletes into the brands. So we had not only Michael Jordan stories to tell, but we had current stories that we could tell about other athletes. And we also decided that we were going to expand beyond just basketball. So we had stories. We brought in baseball, football, soccer. We have athletes across all sports now. And the whole idea is to stay relevant with consumers, because if we just told old Michael Jordan stories, I don't know how relevant that would be. But what we freshen up those stories every so often. We'll bring back a story, but add something to it that wasn't told before, or we'll talk about a shoe in a way that it was never talked about in the past. So it's really about staying relevant with consumers and making sure that the stories you're telling are relevant to people that you're connecting with.
If I said to you the word lovable, what would you think of?
Lovable. First, I guess my first thought would be family. The first thing that would come to me when I think lovable is family. I've been fortunate. I come from a really close-knit family, but also I've developed family outside of my relationship family. And
what do you think when you hear the word Spotify?
Spotify? Shopping?
Spotify or Shopify? Shopify's
Spotify,
shopping.
music.
Spotify's music. Yes.
Music.
Right.
Music, yes.
Well, I guess so. Yeah, absolutely. Another question is, somebody is in the audience is, I'm a CEO who's not a founder. How will you suggest I approach storytelling when you're not the founder? When you're the CEO of a company, you didn't start the company, but you're the CEO. What's your thoughts?
Well, I think as a CEO, again, part of your job is to make sure that you're telling relevant stories, authentic stories. And I don't think you have to be the founder to actually represent the brand the way it needs to be represented. To me, Phil Knight is the founder of Nike, but we have a ton of people who tell stories about Nike and tell different stories about Nike, and they don't all come. Matter of fact, hardly any of them come from Phil these days. But again, I think you don't have to be the founder to be able to understand who the consumer is, who it is you want to speak to, and how you want to deliver those stories to them. I think it's not about necessarily being the founder to do that.
And finally, right, what Jordan series 1 to 39 is your personal favorite and why?
So I've got a few favorites. I heard somebody ask Michael Jordan that one time, and he said, that's like asking me which one of my kids is my favorite. But to me, I've got a few. The Air Jordan 1 is one of my favorites. The Air Jordan 3, Air Jordan 11. And then one that you don't hear too much is the Air Jordan 15. And the reason that is one of my favorites is because that's actually the shoe that launched the brand. Michael Jordan had retired. That was the first shoe that we launched that he did not play in. And we had to tell a totally different story at that point, because this story was not about Michael Jordan on the basketball court, which all of the other stories up to that point had been about. This was about Michael Jordan kind of stepping back from the game, but actually being the influence and the inspiration for other players and for the brand to go forward. And So and the fact that that shoe was successful and that we launched it successfully it made a difference for us. I believe that if we had not launched that, had not been successful launching that shoe, I don't think the Jordan brand would still be what it is.
Right.
It definitely wouldn't be what it is today, because Nike, that gave Nike the belief that we could move forward with the Jordan brand.
Well,
because we were able to launch that shoe without Michael Jordan playing in it.
right. Well, Larry Miller, it's been fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing your personal story and your journey and your thoughts about branding and storytelling. I'm sure many of us have taken away some learnings from that. So, ladies and gentlemen, please, a big round of applause for Larry.
Thank you.
And I shall see you later. Thank you.